Good morning, everybody. It's Saturday again, and it's our Lotus review. And happy to be online to see all of you. And we should have a very wonderful day of review today because the past week, once again, the Lotus Sutra was packed with excitement and a lot of wonderful stories. And so today we're going to, as usual, we're going to review because there's so much to be reviewed. And as Master said a few days ago, words are just like you speak it. The words are spoken into the air. And if there's no one to hear it, to catch it, to memorize it, to put it in store in our heart and mind, then the words would just be like the air and the wind, just disappear and vanish. Same thing with Dharma. It's all around us, but if we are not able to catch it or review it, then it would just be as if they were never spoken, and it would just be as if they were never taught. So what we're trying to do, the purpose of the review is so that we can stress and focus and also imprint it deeply in our mind. So all the things that we hear in the past week, there are many, many important things. And I hope that at least that we can take away 2 or 3 important aspects that upon further review, we will be able to keep it deep in our heart, that we can always walk away with something and say, yes, indeed, we understand. We understand what it is. So previously, we talked about the Q&A, the question and the answer. And Master today went in detail, a lot of detail about the questions that were asked. The questions that were asked by Maitreya and why he asked the question. And if we were Xun Fa Xiang today, then we would know that there were a lot of times when the questions that were asked were not because they don't understand, but rather they were asking the questions for the future generation, for the future followers, so that we have the teacher that could answer them in front of us. But in the future, the teacher will not be with the people in the future. Therefore, let's ask the questions now. It's not so much that the person that's asking the question do not know the answer, but rather they were asking for the future. So rather than having the disciples having to answer them, they actually have the master answering the questions for all to listen. So I talked about in terms of the Q&A, it's important to always be prepared to know what you're asking, and also to know the answer to the questions you're asking. And in fact, know that the answer, you have always had the answer in you already. And very importantly also is that you are not asking for yourselves, but also ask for the sake, for the benefit of other people. And we also talk about the 4 wisdoms and the 4 joyous acts, that the 4 joyous practices. And we revisit them again as they were covered many, many times. So that was last week, what we talked about last week. So this week, we're going to talk about, and this is the analogy that have been used many, many, many times. This is the analogy of the path, a trail, paving the road, or opening the trail and paving the road. And this is the one central analogy that Master have been talking about. I think it was ever since Malaysia when Master was talking about 大马连心, and that was years ago. And she began to talk about 爱铺满地. That means using love to pave the road. So I'm sure this analogy had been going on for a long, long time, especially if we talk about 经者道也,道者路也, that the sutra is the principle, is the road, is the path. And it's the road that we travel on. So it's the analogy that had been going on for a long time. And these few days, or this past week, there have been abundance of this analogy. And we're going to talk about it a little bit deeper, a little bit more. And we're going to talk about the space and time and the sentient beings and how they're all associated with each other. So as with all these summary, these are all just summaries. They do not reflect the completeness of the Dharma, but rather, hopefully, that they open a little bit, a little door to further understanding. And in fact, if you already have a very deep understanding of the analogy, that's even better. But it's always nice to know that there are different paths. There are different ways to go about thinking about how this works. So maybe something that's useful will be able to be applied in our lives, and therefore the Dharma will be able to be kept in our mind. So let's talk about open the trail and pave the road. And it's a topic that Master have been talking about, analogy that she has been using many times. So we don't see this sign often, but in traffic, there are a lot of times we see these road signs that tells you where to go and the direction. And it tells you some of the information, for example, the speed limit, the name of the place, and it gives you a little bit of direction on where to go and what to expect. Usually, if we want to go somewhere, and I'm sure that all of us today, in the past, and trust me, I live in that past also. I had lived in that past also, was that if you want to go to any place, okay, you take out what's called a map. It could be in a book, it could be a piece of paper, but you take out what's called a map. And then you honestly put your finger on it and you trace the road that you're traveling on, and you get there. Nowadays, you take out what's called a phone. And in the phone, there will be a map. And in that map, not only would there be a map, but it will have a little icon of where you are. And it tells you exactly where you are, and it tells you exactly where you want to go, and it tells you exactly how to get there. And after all, I'm sure we're all very familiar with all these navigational tools and all these, whether it was Google Map, or I think it was in the very early on, I think we had a separate device, a very separate device that's using GPS, a separate device, not your phone. And nowadays, no one uses a separate device, right? You just use your phone for navigational purposes. And that's what we do today. Now, according to studies, we need at least three of these GPS satellites. Now, four, if there are four, it would be the best. But 3 is the minimum to be able to triangulate our position. And I'm sure if you're an expert in this area, you can correct me. That 3 of these would be able to help us triangulate. Now, if you have 4, it would be even more detailed in terms of giving you the 3D information, including height, the depth of where you are. And at any moment right now, there are, I think, 24. So you think there could be many, because if everybody needs 3, imagine how many people with their phones GPS. And in that case, there could be many more. And so, but then there are only 24 around the globe moment, circulating, operating at % of the time. So there are actually roughly about 30 something GPS satellites. So that's not the main. I'm just trying to share with you that we have all these tools and wonderful apps for when the places that we're going actually exist. And what I'm trying to say, well, what if the destination that we're going to is very spiritual? Like, for example, I am going to, my goal is enlightenment. Give me a GPS that shows me where enlightenment is and how to get there. Well, there isn't a GPS that will show you that, because that isn't a place you go to. It's not like if you go to India and if you go to Bodhi Gaya, that you will be enlightened there. No, that's where Buddha was enlightened, not us. And therefore, if you put in your destination as enlightenment, you might not be able to find it. You might not be able to find out where it is. And therefore, no GPS will be able to tell you where it is. So GPS can tell you where we want to go, but what if the place you want to go to is something that is more spiritual? Naturally, you will need someone who is a guide, someone who can tell you where to go. And first of all, you need to know how to get there, right? A guide or someone would tell you, oh, you just go down here and maybe for 10 kilometers, you turn left and then you see a convenience store, and you turn right, and then you go straight again until you reach enlightenment. And so you need the direction, right? Even better if we have somebody along with us, right? So suppose somebody is with us, and when we're asking for directions, the person, a companion, is also next to us, and they are also hearing the same directions. So when we are lost, the person next to us will say, hey, did you remember that the person said that? So it's good if we have a companion, if we have companions along and can remind us, did you remember to take that left turn? And that's always something that's very important. Someone to be with us along on this path, right? You need to know where to go, and it's great if we have a companion. And even better if not only do we have companions who together with us have never been there and we don't know how to get there, we're only having the instructions. Even better if we have a guide who knows the path, knows the way there, and instead of just telling us how to get there, actually takes us there. And even best, if the guide themselves have been there before. Okay, so going to a place where there's no GPS, what are you going to do? You're not going to need the direction. And it's better if we have somebody with us together to find and explore and discover the path. And even better if we have someone who knows the way. And even better if that person had been there before. So these are the factors that we need in order for us to help us find the place that no GPS in the world can take us. We need to know where it is. How do we get there? Hey, let's find companions or family in Dharma together. Even better if somebody had been there, a more senior member or our master or Buddha who is the guide. And even better if the guide themselves had already been to where you want to go. So all these are very key and important factors on helping us getting where we need to go without the benefit of a GPS. So it's just like this, right? In this forest, there's no travel path. There's no trail out of this path. And the more you walk, the more people continue to travel, eventually a trail will emerge out of all this. So from unknown, from not knowing to finally having a sense of direction. And then not just that, but from having just a direction in your mind to eventually form a trail that this is something that's workable. And then from this trail, eventually that there will be a path coming out of this. And then from this path, eventually it will become a road. So this is a progression that we're all on this journey together. From not knowing what I want with my life, and then all of a sudden I found out, hey, this is something that's very valuable. Let's do something about it. Let's hear more about it. Master Cheng Yen teaches this. It sounds pretty reasonable. I would like to know more. That's great. So from not knowing to now knowing a direction, and then from a direction to actually walk and make a trail out of it. And the more you walk, this trail will be bigger and bigger and becomes a path. More people on it, and eventually not just a trail or a path, it becomes a road where not only you can walk on it, but cars can drive on it. So it's just like what we just talked about before. A forest where there is just all covered by grass. There is no trail. You don't even know where to begin or how to get there, how to get to places. Eventually, you're lost here. You don't know how to get out of this forest. But the more you walk, knowing a direction, east, go east. The more you walk on this path, the more people on this path, eventually there will be a small trail out of all this forest. And not only that, this trail will be even more and more established to become a path. And eventually it will become a road where many, many people can see and walk on. And when you have even more people on it, even becomes a railroad where even the bigger cars and more cars can come in. So this is the path we're talking about. The more you walk the path, the more the path becomes a road. And then the more people will come and walk, and the more people will walk the path, and it becomes a bigger and bigger road, and more people will come on. And that's what this analogy is about. Bodhisattva path is the same. The more that you walk on this path, the more that for you, it no longer becomes just a path. It no longer becomes just a road. It's actually a road where more and more people can come and walk, and then there will be a very well-traveled road, and more people will come and walk this path. So, however, on the other hand, if we don't walk this road, then it will decay into path, into trail. Eventually, it will disappear. And it's something that it's a path, that the Bodhisattva path is the very same thing. If we don't walk on it, if we don't use it, it will decay, and no one will know about it. Eventually, it will disappear. So I once had this question. I remember Master talked to the teachers. There were some teachers that once came to talk to Master about how difficult it is to teach the children, to teach the children of today's education system. And the teacher said, oh, these students are so very difficult to teach. And they don't really listen. They don't really take well to all the lessons, and continue to complain about the new generation, the young people of today. And the Master said, there aren't. And this is, I think this is a classic that most of you know what I'm talking about. So most people, so Master said that there are no students that cannot be taught, only the teachers that don't know how to teach. And that's to say that all students can be taught if given the right way. And there are only those teachers that don't know how to find the right way to accommodate and to match the capacities, the capabilities of the students. So that makes a lot of sense, right? So my question is this. Well, if Buddha is such a wonderful teacher, okay, then why am I still not enlightened? There are no students that can be taught. There are only teachers that don't know how to teach. So the fact that we still have many, many people not enlightened yet, does that mean that the teacher is incapable? And, I once was contemplating on asking Master that question, and except I wasn't going to ask about the Buddha. I was going to ask about the Master. I was going to ask the Master, well, Master, if there are no students that cannot be taught, only teachers that don't know how to teach, the fact that we're still not there yet, does that mean that we don't have a good teacher? And obviously, I don't have the heart to ask that. And I don't dare to ask questions like that. But anyway, I have this question that if Buddha is such a wonderful teacher and the greatest teacher of all, then why are we still not yet enlightened, right? Isn't that what the Buddha is trying to teach us? And why are we still so trapped? And so this is what Master said yesterday in the Xun Fa Xiang. And this is something that I thought was very, very much in line with what the question was really talking about. So it says, even if Buddha is our great teacher and we are guided by Dharma, okay, guided by the teachings of the Buddha, we are bound by our collective karma, continuously getting lost in the woods. Sometimes we found the way out, then we are quickly overwhelmed by affliction and once again trapped and remain lost in the woods. And this is something that is so unfortunate, that imagine you're helping somebody alone, and the moment that you turn around to help somebody else, that person that you just helped receded and fell back down again, and you need to go back to help that person again while you look back, and then the other person was already receding again. So this is what's happening, in that Master was saying that even if with our great teacher, who had already taught us all the things that we needed, and we're trying our hardest, but with our collective karma, we are continuously getting lost. We're continuously being lost and deviated from the path. Sometimes we remember, Sometimes we work hard and diligent, and we found the way out, and we're so happy. And the Buddha was happy too. The teachers are happy. The students are happy. Everybody was happy. We found the way out. And then how long can we maintain that? Until the next thing happens, then we forget about all of that, and we threw everything out again, and affliction takes over. We're quickly overwhelmed by affliction again. And once again, we're back to where we were, trapped in the forest, trapped and lost in the woods. Okay, yet, never give up. The Buddha never gave up, and the master never gave up. No, I don't equate Buddha or master to this little mouse that we're seeing here. It's just a principle, please. It's a principle. So please get the principle, not the literal meaning. But the idea is never give up. That's what happened. Master, the Buddha, never gives up. Even knowing that it will be all the time very difficult to pass on the teaching to all, but it is still very, very difficult. And therefore, it's something that we are continuously trying very hard to follow. And the most important thing is the guy never gives up. And it's very, very important. So Master continued to talk about, we all have walked on this road. And the original literal meaning is we already had this road open for us. So the path was already open. But after a long time of not using it, it has decayed beyond recognition. The road was already covered up, decayed, beyond repair, and no one knew about it. And now we had to start anew to reopen this path. And that's what this is about. How knowing that there is a path and the road, after a long time of not using it, it has decayed. But now we have to reopen this path. And we know the way and the direction. We know the direction. We know what we're trying to do. But the original trail, the original path was already covered up by all the trees and the rocks, and it's beyond recognition. We have to restart by removing the trees and the rock, then work hard to open the road, pave the road. And that's what Master said. Even though it was so difficult, we have to have somebody to guide us to reopen the road and pave this path. And that's what all this analogy is about. So in short, the more people that's on the trail, then the less people will be lost. If we can all find this trail and find this path, more of them on this trail and on this path, less people will be lost. If we can pave the road, if the trail is not hard to walk on, more pavement on the road and less likely to be stuck. So there are two different concepts here. One is, can we find the trail and can we find the path? Once you find the trail, Master talks about pave the road, make it easier for others to walk on. So if you have more pavement on the road, less likely for people that's already choose to be on this road to be stuck or to be hurt, to fall down. So one is to be on the path, two is to remain on the path. And that's why Master always talks about to open the path and to pave the road. And two very different concepts. For those of us that's opening the trail, we are now opening the horizon to all the people to let them know about the importance of Bodhisattva path. But for those of us that are following, it is our job to make it so that this path is easy to walk on. It's okay to walk on. And that's what Master said today. Today, that Manjushri asked the Buddha the question of how can we practice with joy and peace? Because knowing that it will be so difficult to pass the Dharma, we must know for future generation and disciples how it is best to practice, to receive the joy, to find the peace. And that's where chapter 13 was about. That's where chapter 14 was about. The chapter of joyous and peaceful practices. And that's what we're trying to talk about here, is that it's not just important to open the road, but it's just as important to pave the road. Okay, so that was the first part about opening the trail, opening the path, and paving the road. And I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the space and time and sentient beings. And this is the very important, very something that I felt was essential. A couple of days ago, Master talks about the 4 elements, and I'm sure right now, Master's talking about the 4 elements that are out of balance, namely the earth, water, fire, and wind. And if we all follow the news very closely, we knew yesterday there was a magnitude, I think over 8, I think it was 8.2 earthquake in Mexico. So there was the imbalance of the earth element. And of course, in the very recent, we're talking about the huge water, the flooding that's taken place, whether it's in Nepal, in Asia, in India, or in Sierra Leone, and all these other places, right? Fire that's raging in California, and wind. Oh my goodness! If you're talking about the wind, there was this Hurricane Harvey that hits the United States, right? There's this Harvey, and then Irma is coming, and then after that there's Jose. So we're talking about all these hurricanes, typhoons, right? The 4 elements that are completely out of balance. But a couple of days ago, Master talks about the 5th element. The 5th element. And no, she's not talking about the movie, The 5th Element. But it's the same name. And I'm sure for some of you that probably knew about the movie, if you're in the 90s. This is a long time ago, a long movie, very old movie. But The 5th Element was a great movie for its action, not for its dharma reasons. But anyway, the 5th element being space. And Master talks about the importance of space. Now, why is it important? Because in this chapter, the emergence of the Bodhisattvas, in this particular chapters, emergence from the ground, it's actually emerged from space beneath earth. So Master is talking about, even if you have the 4 elements, the earth, the water, the fire, and the wind, without the space with which the 4 elements exist in, there will not be the formation of all these 4 elements, or there will not be a combining of these 4 elements. Without the space, then you can't have any elements that formed, okay? So space is very important. Then for the past few days, in the whole week, in fact, Master was talking about the importance of time. That time is something that makes it happen. Same thing. That's actually the 6th element, right? So you have all the 4 basic elements. With the right cause and the right condition, these 4 combine together to form something, form everything. But without the space to exist in, you can't form. Without the time, you can't form it. So that's important. And then then furthermore, there is interpersonal relationships, and then Master talks about, really, it's the interaction among all the disciples, between the teacher and the disciple, between the disciples themselves, and how there's this relationship. And that brought me back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the Trikaya, the 3 bodies of Buddha, the Trikaya. And there are the Dharma body, there is the form body, and then there's the emanation or the manifestation of that form. We talk about the 3 bodies, and this exactly fits the concept of space, time, and sentient beings. How did it so? Just imagine that the Dharma itself exists throughout time, and that's what Master had been talking about. The Dharma is always around us and have been around us. There's no beginning, there's no end. It just always is. The only thing is that, do we know of it or not? It's always around us. It has been around us since beginningless, okay? But do we know of it? Just like the words that were spoken, even if you did not hear of it, even if it's lost in the air, the idea and the principle itself was not lost. It has always been there. And that's the Dharma itself. It's ageless. It's timeless. So it exists outside of time. Same thing. The entire space is filled with all the manifestation. Not only do you have Dharma that is ageless and timeless, but you have manifestation of the Buddha, which is the practitioner, or the embodiment of Dharma, the actual physical being that exists in all the spaces to carry out the teachings of Dharma. it is through these manifestations that we actually see what Dharma really means. So you have the principle that you cannot see that exists throughout time. Just like time, you cannot see time, but you can see the manifestations all across all the different spaces. Just like we have representatives, we have volunteers in all the countries. They all wear the same uniform. You don't know the teachings of master, of Tzu Chi, cannot be visible, but you can see the people wearing the uniform, and they embody or they represent somewhat the teachings of Tzu Chi. And then, of course, there is Tzu Chi itself, or master. That's the form. That's the form itself that everybody sort of navigate toward as the center. However, this center, as what we beginning to find out in this chapter, didn't start 1966. If we want to talk about Tzu Chi, if you equate it and draw a parallel to what we see now in today's chapter, Buddha didn't begin preaching, 2,500 years ago. He began his bodhisattva path ages and ages ago. And that's what happened. Same thing. We did not start Tzu Chi when, for me, it was 2000, so it was 17 years ago. For me, it wasn't 17 years ago. It was long before that. So for those of you that have started, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it really wasn't that time. You actually started even longer before that. However, we right now, this person, this body, this name, started 17 years ago. That's the truth. Just like the Buddha started preaching the Dharma 2,500 years ago. But was it really then? No, it was further beyond that. So the idea of the time and space and interpersonal continue to exist throughout. So before I wrap up, I also so that's what I want to share about the time and the space. But before I wrap up, I wanted to give something extra. This is something that I got that I wanted to share. So we talk about deep faith and how important it is. And just a few days ago, Master was still talking about the Buddha in the Sutra was saying, "Everybody listen carefully, please believe me." And saying that, please show faith and believe out of Buddha is already very telling. For at that time, it was already beyond 42 years of preaching. Yet the teacher himself still had to tell the students, you have to believe me because it's very difficult to believe. And that tells you how difficult it is for people to have a very, very deep faith. Very difficult, even to the Buddha himself, even after 42 years of preaching to the students, the Buddha, the teacher, still finds it necessary to tell the students, please believe me. So why is it so important? And this is something that Master talked about. She said, even after 42 years of preaching, she's talking about Buddha time. After 42 years of preaching, the Buddha knew that time was running out, because of natural causes, right? Buddha lived to be age of 80 and time is running out. The time to turn to great vehicle is now. To turn to one true vehicle, the one true principle is now. But still not enough time. So after 7 years of the final 7 years to preach the Lotus Sutra, the Lotus Dharma, the true one true vehicle, it's not enough time for the true teaching to take root in the disciples. So the Dharma did not hold. The roots didn't go deep. So the Dharma didn't hold the ground. And now it's rarely seen in its origin. The origin being that we know of in India. Buddhism is not major religion. In fact, it's not often practiced in India. Same thing in Nepal. It became a tourist site, but it's not something that people understand or something that people practice. And the reason why Master said this was she knew that the time was running out, but she would rather than going wide across and get as many people to hear the message as possible, she would rather that every one of us now, that she would focus on the time so that we can take deep root on what this teaching really is, so that we can pass this teaching on. So then in its origin, at its origin, here at Hualien or here in Taiwan or whatnot, at your location, at your office where Tzu Chi first started, at that location, at that origin, it's not going to be lost. And I think that's something that Master truly wants us to take it, so that we can imprint it deeply in our heart and mind, so that we don't lose it easily. And not only with us, but when we are gone, that people beyond and people after us won't also lose it as well. And that's the most important. So how do we do that? Well, if we can always keep it, Buddha's heart is our heart, and keep Master's mission is our mission. And that's what we need to do, and make the Dharma into our everyday lives, incorporate it, integrate it into our lives, integrate into the way that we think. Make this path and trail as well traveled as it possibly can. And this will become a road. And make this road, pave it so that it's easy to travel on, so people will not get lost and people will not get stuck. So more people will then walk this path, and eventually all of the bodhisattvas, we will have many, many companions. We will not be afraid of being lost, and we will not be afraid of being stuck, as we have companions, Dharma, family in Dharma, as well as a wonderful guide to help us. So that's my sharing for today, and hopefully we have a better or in-depth or a different understanding of the path and the road, and hopefully that we can remember that analogy whenever Master talks about that, and then we would know what she's referring to. So thank you. That's my sharing for today. And we're gonna now listen to our brothers and sisters from Singapore to share with us. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna share how Tzu Chi has changed me in two ways. One is I'm attending the daily live Dharma talk by Master. And why did I manage to do so? Because in the past, around me there are those very faithful Christians, the diligence practicing what Jesus has been preaching. So they have a kind of characteristics which I always adore. Like they are very at ease with themselves, and they are very nice people. So I always wonder, how can Christian practice like that? And I'm just curious, and later I found out that it's because they have this Sunday service, and during the whole week they might be at angers towards their family or colleagues, but on every Sunday, when they went for the church service, they kind of like cleanse up their emotion grudges, and on Monday itself they become very nice again. So I'm thinking, but unfortunately I'm not affiliated to Christianity, and I'm a Buddhist. So when I came in contact with Tzu Chi, I know that we have this daily service, or we call it a daily Master Dharma talk at 5:30, at 5:20 every day. So we are so fortunate that we even better than Christian. Instead of once a week, we have daily. So therefore, I am very glad and fortunate, and also have Sister Xin Qing is my buddy, my sparring partner, that to come together, pushing each other to come and wake up at 4 o'clock and ready for the Dharma talk. So Tzu Chi has changed me in that sense. And secondly, also last time I used to enjoy short trip. Like last Friday is Hari Raya Haji. It's a public holiday on Friday. Before I joined Tzu Chi, these are the great opportunities that I will not let go. In advance, I will start plan to have short weekend trip, like going to Batam for 3 days, 2 nights, or 2 days, 1 night, Malacca's holidays, to pamper myself. But ever since I joined Tzu Chi, I actually ever tried to go for such trip before, but I no longer enjoy it. I do not know why. I just find that Tzu Chi's activities is more interesting. Doing home visit is more joyful by helping others. So actually, my changes has realized by my husband as well. My brother, I mean my husband, was Jia Shi Xiong. Because of the daily 熏法香, so like today I being very upset, but the next day morning, Dhamma's preached by Master will make me calm down, and I reminds me to be a better person day by day. So this has changed me a lot, and my husband noticed it. So take an example, like at night, I'm a working wife and a mother. So at night, sometimes my husband came back home before me. So when at home, he came back when about 8+ p.m. My husband was sitting down there very relaxed, having a good meal and watching TV, enjoying himself. The moment he saw me walking into the house, very tired, with dragging my body into the living hall, my husband somehow will have this habit to ask me to say like, wife, please pour me a cup of water, while he is sitting down there and just watching TV. I was thinking I was so tired that I was rather the other way around, that he served me water. But that is not happening. So, but Master said we must treat our family well. So therefore, I served him water. So I thought that should end the story. I can go back to my room and put my things down and go for a shower. Next thing, my husband will come to me and ask me to do another chores. So just before I get angry, my husband will call me 慈济容. That's in Chinese means that 慈济 Jing. So with that name, it's like a journey to the west, the Su Wukong. So the thing will just 慈济容, that name will remind me that I must practice what Master has taught, to be nice to the family members. So therefore, I will just guai and be good person, to just go and serve fulfill whatever my husband's needs, and then quickly get away from him. So in short, I think Tzu Chi has taught me a lot. Master has taught us a lot, that life is very impermanent. Life is just in between breath. This moment we are breathing out. The next moment we can just stop breathing. I remember last Saturday, my colleague's wife just passed away due to a car accident. She was attending a colleague's birthday party. Then at night, the birthday colleague sent him back, and they just skid on the road on a motorbike. Both of them passed away immediately on the spot at 12:30. So the family, the son cannot get over it, because the son every day was kissing the mother good night, and in the morning will hug the mother. So can we imagine that Saturday morning, the son, the 15-year-old son, was kissing the mother goodbye and go to his work. The next day, Sunday night, the mother is gone and is just lying on the coffin, in the coffin. So life is really impermanent. Seize the moment and make full use of our precious life now. So I'm applying that as, let us walk the Dharma path. Come to 熏法香 daily. If not, at least on a weekly, this Saturday, English 熏法香. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Very, very quickly, I think just as Master Shifu said, that to see to heaven, it's really not. It's not just a location. It's really a state of mind where we know that we are still needing to undergo training to continue this path. It's not like Master calls you a bodhisattva and now that means you're already done or you already have to begin with the training. It's everything that we do is considered to be a training still. And also, as what Shifu said in question number 2, it's we're doing this thing not for the payback or for the return of praises. However, as Master said, that this is exactly, we are speaking truthful words. And it's not about when you praise a little child for walking, for doing a good job. You're not overly praising them. You're praising them because for them to be able to have that accomplishment, it is truly praiseworthy. And you don't speak untruthful words. And I think that's very important. Everything that comes out of, as Shifu said, is sincerity. So now I think, and so to answer question 1, we have a little bit more time. We're gonna have Brother Yoping, who will share with us the feedback for question 1.
Thank you, all brothers and sisters. For question 1, how do we inspire compassion in a person who is hurt from relationship and lost trust in human? Yeah, I could really imagine in this era, people that are in this situation, especially relationship between the spouse or people, and then when things happen in that relationship, and it feels that whole world to the person, the whole world is gone, and it couldn't really trust anyone anymore. I think we have this kind of stories many in this world. How to inspire compassion in such a person? I think, of course, compassion is already a stage that is very far beyond that is the bodhisattva's level, but we need to know what is love, and what I always feel is the compassion comes from knowing that there is love in this world, that there is people that I can trust, and I always feel that in the Tzu family, because wherever I go, no matter which country I went to, like for example, when I first came back to Taiwan, actually I've been away from Taiwan for many years. When I first came back, I can very quickly find family again in Taiwan, and though people that I don't know, but I feel that love, the family feeling over here, and quickly I could feel the trust again. And so I think the trust for human begins from us, and when we have a lot of people together, creating the whole environment, what we call 道气, or in a more family feeling, the feeling, whole atmosphere is very friendly, like in our Jing Tang or in our Jing hall. No, when any people that come into our Jing hall, we can be very friendly, like a family, like someone, like a family member coming back from outside, into the home, and then feeling at home. I think this is the atmosphere that we can create in our Jingsi Hall, and in fact, in between all our brothers and sisters. And when there's many of us, not just one or two, but when the whole atmosphere and all hundreds of people, all the brothers and sisters, when we all can give our love to anyone, then I think such a person in this world that is hurt from relationship or lost trust in human, when he finally find back, in that it could take long, but when there's the environment, in that environment of love, I'm sure he'll one day feel the trust again. It takes some time in order to trust a person again, because trust is, you need to prove for ourselves that our love is not one time off. Our love, we do not seek anything in return, and to prove that we are not seeking anything in return, it takes time. That we really fall many times. You came and we didn't ask anything from you. You really need to sustain it for a long time. For the first few times, maybe you still doubt that I really, so are Tzu people always really so kind, or is it just show? No, just for show. It takes time. We need to just sustaining it, and after, I just believe that one day, it's not just 家种, because it's true from us. For us, it's done all the time, and after a long time, he will believe, and he will find back that trust of people again. And this is from us, all brothers and sisters, all together to create an atmosphere. So this is my feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Yoping, and that's what we do here in Tzu, right? That's what we do is we will establish this atmosphere, and then of family and trust. And the other thing is that not only is it a place of love, but we also commit ourselves. So a lot of times, this is how I look at it. When I myself encounter well, not a loss or hurt in relationship, but when I myself encounter difficulties, when I come back here, it's a place of love and really care But I also look at the things that we do. For example, right now, you slowly begin to see that your problems compared to the other problems in the world, it's really, really minor. For example, the other day I was just worried about something that I was doing, and then I pick up the newspaper, and then on the front it talks about North Korea and the U.S. And I'll be thinking, well, I'm glad I'm not, President Trump, or I'm not president of China, or I'm not president of South Korea, that I have to think about a problem that I cannot possibly solve on my own. I'm faced with a problem that I potentially can solve, or a much smaller problem. And when you look at in the perspective of the whole world, all the things that's going on, I quickly realize that the problem that I'm facing is much smaller. And then you have a better scale, you have a better grasp of things. When you begin to not focus so much on yourself, then you can begin to see more, and then you will be able to open up. However, don't tell this to the person who has just lost confidence in person. You don't tell people, hey, your problem is not important. Look at the other problems, and that's a lot bigger than you. Don't tell them that, okay? But be with them, okay? And slowly make them see other problems and take the focus off of their own problem, and maybe it would be one good way to heal from the relationship and then gain the trust again. So we didn't have time to go to the last question about the translation. So we're gonna end it here. It's already 8:01. So thank you all again for this week's wonderful time, and thank you, sister, and our brother and sister from Singapore to bring such great Dharma joy. And I hope that we will continue to be on the air, 熏法香 every day, and to seize that moment, to seize the time, and let not the words be spoken into the air and be lost, but rather catch the words and catch the Dharma, and make sure we put it in deep into our memory and imprint it in our mind, so that the words spoken were not lost. So the Dharma that are taught were not lost in the air and just through the ages. So we can keep it and be true, the true descendant of this Dharma and true disciples of the Dharma, and be the teachers one day to share and preach this Dharma. So once again, thank you all. It's been a privilege and an honor to be able to share with all of you and to know all of you. And we're going to call it a day today. And thank you all, and may all of you have a wonderful week coming up. Thank you, and bye-bye.